Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my first update on my experience with the Microsoft Surface Laptop Studio. So this specific build retails for around $2,100. You have an H series 11th gen Intel quad-core processor. We also have an Nvidia RTX 3050 Ti, 16 gigs of RAM, and a ½ terabyte SSD. It is fairly thick, fairly large. The big trick it has up its sleeve, of course, is that the display tries to mimic the Studio desktop that Microsoft introduced, and I don't know, it seems like they've abandoned it at this point, which is sad. It has a 14.4-inch IPS panel, which does have a 120 hertz refresh rate, which is certainly nice. But let me start off by just showing you some quality from, you know what, should I go flat? I mean, the fact that it flops around like this is going to be part of today's video. I'll be talking about it because I don't really know what to make of this thing. I think it's the start of something good. I'm just not sure exactly where it's going, and I'll get to why. Because while Microsoft is marketing this as something new, I've seen a lot of things that resemble this, and a lot of people are talking about older machines all of a year ago that are similar to it, but I feel like my Surface Duo 11, I said Surface, my Sony Vaio Duo 11 and Duo 13 were really the beginning of a device like this. So let's go ahead and take a look at some video. Screen quality is excellent, audio quality is excellent. Take a look and a listen. Make sure that audio is all the way up. Brightness is at 100% here. I'm going to stop it there. I think you get a pretty good idea. Just like the Surface Pro 8, audio and video, Microsoft made sure is exceedingly impressive, and it should be. This is a high-res panel. It's not 4K, but it's beyond standard 2K for the most part. And at 14.4 inches, it just performs well. It's really bright. I didn't measure the nits yet, but it's good. Color accuracy seems solid. Everything about it is flattering. Windows 11, of course, stock on this machine, like all the new Surface products, runs well. Let's talk about benchmarking, because I think that's another thing a lot of you are going to be interested in. There you have the 3D Mark benchmark that I most recently ran in performance, the highest performance mode for this machine. And so basically this is from a gaming perspective with the GPU, the 3050 Ti, we're pretty much getting the performance we would out of, I would say, a gaming laptop like HP's Victus. So that's the most comparable thing that I can draw a comparison to. And, those are not expensive machines. They are not $2,100 machines made by Microsoft, of course. But for those of you wondering what sort of gaming performance to expect out of this, I've played a little bit of Rust on here already, and it ran perfectly fine, and that was actually at native resolution. So that's good, but Rust is an old game. Do not expect to run, modern AAA titles, brand new stuff on here at native resolution. It's just not going to happen. Think of more along the lines of if you can pull off full HD and get 60 frames with newer titles, you will be a happy camper. Photo and video editing, of course, this is going to do better than the Surface Pro 8, which can, of course, photo and video edit, but because we have a dedicated GPU inside of this machine, remember the base configuration is Iris Xe graphics, just like the Surface Pro. It's doable there, but this is really what you should be getting if you plan on doing any of that sort of work, because you really do need that dedicated GPU, and that's reflected even here in a gaming benchmark like the one you're looking at. I think one of the more disappointing things for me is the NVMEs that Microsoft has decided to lean on for these machines, as well as the Surface Pros. They're just underwhelming when it comes to performance, especially at the price points that Microsoft is selling. This starts at $1,600, goes over $3,000 at its top end spec. The 32 gig, 1 terabyte model with the same GPU you're looking at here. And I just don't really know what to say about this. I mean, are you going to see a tangible performance in what you're doing? Not necessarily, and I think that's why Microsoft figured this is not a big deal. But to me, it's just one of those things where I guess I have expectations that are unrealistic when it comes to what Microsoft is delivering to all of us here in 2021. But that gives you an idea, at least in terms of overall performance, in terms of what to expect. Basically, what you're looking at are the benchmark results you'd get out of a gaming laptop that's around $1,000, a little bit more than $1,000. But of course, that's not what you're paying for. What you're really paying for is Microsoft's build quality. What you're really paying for is the studio-esque design. Now, I mentioned before my old Sony Vaio Duo 13. I had the Duo 11 before that. And then, of course, Sony, when they still owned Vaio, also pretty much invented this entire trick. So this is something that, while some of you may not remember the days, many of you that subscribe to my channel will remember the Sony laptops that performed this trick, and it was not a big deal. It was impressive at the time, okay, in the early 2010s. But these days, not so much. And there's a reason. It just isn't that much of a trick anymore. Let me go ahead and close that out if I can. It doesn't look like it's permitting me to do so. There we go. So that's really the big issue for me. And the fact that it doesn't come with the pen doesn't help. You will have to buy the Slim Pen 2 separately. I think that's a letdown. I think that's something that absolutely should come with this. I don't think that it's something where I shouldn't have hit that. I have a secondary version of Chrome there installing. But that to me is a big miss at this point. I think that that's something where, we really should have the Slim Pen included. Of course, I'm getting this going on in the background. But we really should have the Slim Pen included with something like this, because I think without the pen, a lot of the novelty is lost. Now, as for the positions that it can achieve, while I've been telling you that, it's not really something new, I think that the quality of the implementation is something new. So I think, when it sets into this position, there is something to be said for this. It is very cool. It works. It's functional. It does a good job. Do you need it, is what it really comes down to. And that's where I get back to this whole, is it really like the Surface Studio desktop? Because the Studio desktop, even though I don't own one, I've used one, it's seamless basically in any position you drop the display into, any angle you put it on. It's highly customizable. This has its fixed positions, this being probably the most common. The other, of course, going down into tablet mode like this. And then if you want to draw on this, obviously this is going to be one ideal way. The other way would be what I was just showing you before, which is flipping the display over completely. That would be the other way. So, it's something where I don't know, and that's what you're doing when you're putting it into the tablet mode, but I don't know how many people are going to use it in this capacity to show a client something. You can do that, and that's what reminds me of Sony's old laptops. But the fact that there's all this play before it makes the transition to its first magnetic point beyond the keyboard, I don't know. It's just, I said in the unboxing, it's janky, and it is. It swings around. I feel like, before it gets there, it could scratch the keys, or the display could get scratched. It just, look, for a first shot, it's good, but I wouldn't want it. That's really what it comes down to. My personal opinion is that it feels unfinished, and it's a good first attempt, but I don't know. I feel like the old Sony laptops were more finished than this. I feel like they still would have been better suited with a Surface Pro 8 with a larger display, kickstand, a way to connect it to a keyboard, basically still mimicking the old Surface Book. You could detach it, you have the kickstand, you have the tablet, you have 10 hours of battery life, but then when you need GPU and additional battery life, you dock it. I like the concept of the studio laptop, or I should say laptop studio, right? But I just feel like we're not there yet. And I think it's a good first step, but we're still pretty far. I don't like that we don't have a card reader. Of course, the Surface Book had a card reader, and this does supplant, aka replace, the Surface Book. So to not have one is troubling to me. Also, when this thing is under load, it does get really hot. This part of the deck, the extended portion to give you that area right now while it's in this position, it gets really hot. You're not going to get burned, but it's something you need to know. Also, the ventilation that runs around the bottom of this machine, it really does blow. I mean, to the point where I don't think I've worked with any other machine that, when I was playing Rust on this earlier today, of course, hardwired with Microsoft's proprietary Connect charger, it was just, there was so much air coming out of this thing that it made me wonder, with all the talk that they make or they say about thermals and their consideration of, proprietary cooling, there was so much air coming out of this that I was just wondering what was actually going on. I was kind of surprised, and the fact that this was still so hot. I haven't looked at thermals yet, but I'll get there. As far as writing on it, the inking, that will come with time. I do wonder how long this is going to hold up. When you look at, what they did here, that there's just essentially a canvas, a fabric material wrapped around, covering the connector cables, and that I look at, what just happened there. Oh man, I worry about how long this thing can last. And I don't mean that it wasn't designed well enough to survive being open and closed, kind of like, the Fold, and worrying about whether or not the Fold, how many times will it open and close before the hinge breaks. But there are so many different ways users, I mean, if you bought this for a student or a kid, a child, I just see a million ways for them to break this thing. And even an adult is going to be susceptible to breaking it. So those are my concerns. So to round things out here, that you're getting basically in this build with the 3050 Ti and 16 gigs of RAM, half terabyte NVMe drive, and the i7. You're essentially getting the innards of a $1,000 or sub $1,000 laptop. You are absolutely paying for this. We knew that already, but this is just so wobbly, and it makes me nervous to use. Even opening it, if you forget and you go to open this, so many of you always are asking, can you open it one-handed? Well, you know what happens, right? It pops, and I'm being careful, the screen will actually just pop out and hit the keyboard. The other thing you have to realize is that, I'm taking it off of there for a second, is that, and I haven't mentioned this, but I'm going to now because it's necessary. Let's get it out of the way. How much more of a MacBook clone could this look like? I mean, Microsoft has had their own style, their own look for years now with design language. But as soon as I open this up, I didn't say it in the unboxing, but I think you all know it. It literally looks like an old MacBook. It doesn't even look like a current one. It looks like an old one. So, oh, Microsoft, why do you do this to me? I mean, I love Microsoft. I've been a Microsoft user for most of my life. The early years go to Apple. I transitioned, and here I am today, and I just look at this and I'm like, you gave us an old MacBook clone with a Sony Vio display from 2012, well, 2013. It's when they exited the market, 2014. What is going on? It's 2013. I don't know. And you called it new and pretended like you created a new segment. Now look, in a generation or two, this might be that device. It might really change the way we work. But right now, holy crap is all I can say. The trackpad is lovely. The keys are nice to type on, although it is a little bit odd having a deck this long for something that I consider Ultrabook class. It's really heavy for something I still consider Ultrabook class, even though it has a dedicated GPU. It's essentially the worst GPU that you could have. I mean, let's be real. So I don't really know what to tell you about this. I'll get to inking. I right now can't, if you love it and this is what you want, you should buy it, obviously. I'll put a link in the description, but I wouldn't. I mean, I don't, the Surface Pro 8 is great. This thing is another story, and I'll just leave it at that. It's good that it's got Thunderbolt connectivity. That's something that, the Surface Book, a lot of devices that would have been better if they had it, didn't. So I'm glad we have that, because that is the one port to rule them all. Throw this onto a Thunderbolt dock and you can have it, of course, connected to a monitor, keyboard, mouse, other peripherals, speakers, external storage, card readers, everything. And it's, disconnect it, go, come back, connect it, and you're docked. That's great. And that's something that Surface products always needed. But the Surface Book had more than this. And I don't know, for me, this is just incredibly underwhelming. And I also feel like the design is just horrendous. I mean, it's just stacked, pieces of metal. I don't know. I'm failing to really have much more to say. When I first saw this, I was hoping it was a card reader. I mean, when they launched it, and then when I saw that it was just because they were keeping their proprietary charging around, oh man. And of course, a headphone, microphone jack. I'm surprised that they don't eliminate that, a la Apple too, and tell us that we've got to use their Bluetooth buds. So that's it. I mean, I wish I could tell you better things. Battery life, I don't have a firm fix on, but will that really matter? I don't know. If you really want this because of what the screen does, which is really just mimicking devices from not 10 years ago, but close to that, then you're going to buy it, I guess. And this is, in my Surface Pro 8 update, I said Microsoft is really leaning into just selling the brand. This couldn't be any more about it. That's how I feel about this product. I think Windows 11 is good. It's optimized for touch. I think the 120 hertz refresh rate here is more usable than it is on the Surface Pro 8, because at least you can do a little bit of gaming here. But for $2,200, I can't recommend this to anybody. But if you love it, you're going to buy it, right? I mean, that's how life works. That's what it is. But if you care about what you're getting, if you care about what something is worth, as well as worth to you, you've got to think about this one. That's all I can say. At first glance, it seems like it's a concept moving in the right direction. It definitely does what those laptops from nearly 10 years ago couldn't do. It does it better than them. But for this many years later, I feel like it should be excellent, not just better than something from 8 years ago. So that's one of the areas I'm struggling. But again, the display is really nice. Audio quality is good. This is the best processor that they've ever stuck inside of a Surface product. That is portable, of course. But, I mean, they could have gone with a legit i7, an 8-core processor. They didn't have to go quad-core. And the pricing is just totally outrageous. So, again, I want to tell you good things about this, but it's a MacBook clone that has ripped off Sony's old, hinge design, and what Microsoft could have done so much. But I think the Surface Book was a better product. But look, my other half thinks this is a better application than the Surface Book. So, I mean, I know I'm alone, at least in this household, when it comes to that. I think the Surface Book had larger potential in terms of, now with Thunderbolt connectivity, better GPUs, better CPUs. And I just feel like, again, this is just, I feel like someone's going to, we're going to be hearing stories about people breaking this thing very, very soon, just because of the way the screen just pops out and just starts going all over the place. And again, all of you out there who love opening machines with one hand, just don't bother doing it with this. That rounds it out. If you're trying to figure out, you really want to buy it, whether or not you should get larger storage options. To me, this is the sweet spot, I guess, for $2,100. Microsoft should have included the pen. I said that already. What's nice is you can use NVMe Thunderbolt drives like these from Sabrent. Go with any manufacturer. It doesn't matter. That's a big plus. But yeah, that's the first update, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. And please stay safe. Later.